Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We're Tiff and Jack, if you didn't know. It always feels so funny to say that just because we spend a lot of time together. And then I just keep reintroducing ourselves to you. Don't mind me, I'm going to have a little bit of green tea while we do our show today. This is the Energized Empath LIVE Show. We're so happy to be here with you. Our intention, goal, and mission in life is to literally help you find the true alignment within yourself, that you love and accept your sensitivity in a way that not only do you accept it, but you actually utilize the power of your sensitivity in your life in creating more abundance and enjoying the finer things of life according to you. It's your life, your way. It's not your life, our way. It's your life, your way.
Yes, it is.
And today, the topic today, we're going to do a little chit chat. Of course, we want you to say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from. It's always fun to take a look at all the places around the world that we're connecting with. It's so incredible. Jennifer Warwick, so good to see you. Sue Kelly, Leona, Kirsten, Michelle Whitney, we're so glad you're here.
Cheryl, hello.
Belinda, Luann. Oh, it's so great to have all of you here with us today. And remember that we're streaming this out. This is a simulcast. So that means we're here with you on Facebook.
Does that mean simultaneous?
Yes. We're casting simultaneously. So we're joining on our YouTube channel. We have across our business page on Facebook, our personal pages, and our Connected Empath Facebook group. So wherever you're joining us from, we say welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Today's topic, I don't think I said, is about grief. We had a couple of people reach out and say, hey, we just have some questions about this, and we really would love some support in dealing with grief. And grief touches all of us in our life. And the things that we're talking about today may surprise you because there are some things, we know that we have grief when we lose a loved one, but there are a lot of other reasons that we have grief. And as an empath, you especially need to understand the dynamics of what grief can create for you.
Totally.
And how to manage it and how to get through it.
It's a different beast when you have grief as an empath.
Yeah, it really, really is.
So let's do table topics.
I think that would be really fun, and I'm sure it's your turn to answer the questions.
Is it my turn?
The lights in my glasses. Oh, man, it's just quite a challenge being so famous and dealing with... Right. Oh, hello and teary. Let's wipe those tears and love on you and send you some loves, Irene. We're glad you're here. Terry, so glad you're here. Alondra, good to see you. Good to see you. Okay, Tiff is going to answer 3 table topics, do-it-yourself therapy. The very first question, and this is a really fun opportunity. We always ask questions. We've been doing it for years on our podcast because this is how you get to know yourself and other people better. And so the first question for you, Tiff, is which part of your life is most mysterious?
Oh, well, that's probably a no-brainer. I mean, I'm a psychic medium and a healer, and I do all kinds of mystical, weird things. I was born this way. So what's the question? Mysterious? Well, why don't you answer that?
Because it's yours to answer. What part of your life do you think is most mysterious?
Probably the psychic medium part. People always get really excited when we start talking about it because they would like to understand more about it. It's so normal to me, but I really do love talking about it. It's pretty awesome. It's an awesome experience to have. So I think that's probably it.
Does it?
Maybe I should ask our listeners, what or the viewers, for you, what's the most mysterious thing about me? If you know me. And then write this down so you can ask people about you. Like you can ask someone, what's the most mysterious thing about me to you? So I bet you thought I wasn't going to ask that question of the listeners, huh? Because you looked very confused.
Well, I thought you were going to ask them what's most mysterious about them. But both of those questions are really, really good.
Well, the only reason I'm asking is because I am not sure what other people think. I'm not going to guess, but that's what I
would
guess.
say the most mysterious thing that I always have wondered about you is all the things you see. Like you're a seer and you're a psychic medium, so you're always seeing things.
Louise said you are not mysterious.
Ooh.
Well, she knows me very well.
About Tiff being a psychic medium. I mean, it's such a curious world to get in the head and the mind and the energy of somebody that can read energy and can read the Akashic record and is able to really tap into that side of things. And I know that sometimes people can feel like, oh, Tiff is just looking into my energy. No, she really isn't. She doesn't spend her time there. But when she does look into things, boy, the things you can see. And you have no judgment either. So it's just an incredible experience to be with and to be married to a psychic medium. Is very cool. I love it.
I'm so glad you do, because we're together for a long time.
Yep, that's right. We're getting rid of me. Okay, so the next question. Have you ever been attracted to a teacher?
Totally.
You have?
Yeah. Mr. Hagerman, my choir teacher. and listen, like, he called me once to come and babysit his kids so he and his wife could go out, and that was amazing. Because then I could go to his house and see what his life was like, and I was crushing on him the whole time his kids were sleeping.
Oh, it's like crazy stupid love.
Yeah, it was crazy.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's really
That's
funny.
a funny question. How about you guys? Have you ever had a crush on teachers?
And Alondra said, talking about your mysteriousness, Alondra said, Tiff, that you were LDS for a while and you've been able to free yourself. So that feels like one of the mysteries and bag work.
Interesting.
Baby.
Interesting. Yeah.
Araceli, we're so glad you're here. Thank you for your compliment. Belinda, my math teacher. Oh my God. I love it.
Oh, Belinda.
Being attracted to your teachers.
Were you ever attracted to a teacher?
Yes, I was.
Tell.
Yes, it was my English teacher when I was in high school. And her name was Mrs. Murphy.
Ooh.
And I loved English anyway. And it was just awesome. She was just mysterious.
She was?
Yeah, yeah, she was.
That's awesome.
She was. And she was smart. And she loved English and literature.
That doesn't surprise
Louise
me.
says, never had a crush on teachers, not ever.
Wow,
Cheryl,
Louise.
no. Rita, yes. A Facebook user, not sure who you are, but one of our Facebook users said, definitely, as a little girl, should have known I liked women. Me too. Me too. Luann, yes, more than one. Oh, that's so cute. I love that. Okay, the last question is, would you rather have a life coach or a therapist?
I think therapists have a place, but at this point in life, I would want a really good life coach, because life coaches have strategies and they're not tied down to the same rules that therapists have. So I guess that's why I've been a life coach for 100 years.
Yeah, I guess it is.
But I've had many amazing therapists too. I think there's a place for both. But for me in my life at this point, it would definitely be a life coach, because I'm all about like strategies, and I live with a life coch. So
the best of all the worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Terry said, no, both of my parents were teachers. So
and you're like, ew.
No,
Right?
no. Jen, life coach for sure, had both learned from my life coach, more from life coaches. Rita, neither. We have the two of you. Irene, after many years of therapy, aiming towards life coaching. Awesome.
Good.
Alex, it's you. Okay, it was you that was talking about, yes, definitely attracted to teachers, and guess I should have known I was gay.
So I don't know if people know we're life coaches. That's what we are.
Yeah, we are. Yes. We are life coaches. That is what we do.
We are life coaches for empaths.
We are.
Mm-hmm.
That is our specialty, is life coaching. And we say life coaches for empaths because we have a group coaching, empath group coaching program all around the world of people joining us. Many of you are part of that. Empath Rise and Thrive is the name of the group coaching and spiritual healing that we do. But we started and built our business on bag work, which is the process to help you clear and identify and clear those limiting beliefs so that you could create a big, beautiful life. And then, like 9-10 years in, we're like, oh my God, every one of our clients is an empath. Obviously that is our peeps. You're our peeps. And so we just put the word empath in because that's who we see anyway. And it is a beautiful life working with empaths around the world like yourself. and helping you align with your true self and see your sensitivity for the gift that it is.
Right.
Rather than feeling the curse that it can feel to be sometimes.
Yes.
And even within this realm of what we're talking about today, grief, we're going to talk about the lighter, we'll keep it light, but grief is a heavy topic. But
I don't know how light it's going to be. We did our podcast on this last night, and I was like, because there wasn't interaction. See, the awesome part about this, when we do our live show every week, we get interaction because we can ask you questions and then interact, and I love that so much. So I'm sure it will be a lot lighter than what I felt like the podcast was like. Who's out there listening?
Well, I thought it was great. I thought the podcast went really well. And the podcast will be up by next week in our podcast. So you're getting like the sneak peek into the topic, because we do the same topic, but it's different energy when we're here with you live versus when we are doing our podcast. It's just a different energy. And for a minute, we hooked it all together. Nope, we're not doing it that way. We love to come here and do the live stream, and we love to do our podcast. It's a lot of fun both ways.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about grief, shall we? I would like to know from all of you guys that are watching right now, what is your personal definition of grief? Because grief means different things to different people. And then why don't you share what your definition is?
Okay. So my definition of grief is the kind of sadness that takes some time to go away. Like, it is a really deep sadness. It's a full body experience. Grief is.
That's true.
I can't remember what my definition was last night, but grief it's a whole life experience when you're in it.
Good.
It affects
deep
all
sorrow.
the arrows. Yeah, it affects all of the areas of life.
Yeah, Louise, you said deep sorrow, and that's the definition. The exact words I have on my page is deep sorrow of loss of some kind. And when you're an empath, grieving takes on a completely different face because we feel things so deeply. But before we jump into the meat of this lesson today, I want to talk about the different ways that we grieve as human beings. And I think it'll give you some things to think about, because typically when people talk about grief, they're talking about death, like the death of a loved one, which is a terrible grieving experience. But there's some other things that we grieve over as well. So I want to go through this list of, I think I have 5 things here that will enlighten your mind a little bit about grieving. Let me just share this. We as empaths, oftentimes in our life, have been told that we're too emotional, too sensitive, to stop crying. I mean, your family was like, don't ever get Jack to start crying. He'll never stop as a little kid. And I just felt uncomfortable crying and showing emotion because of how we were responded to. So many of us have experienced that, and we just feel so deeply. Always keep in mind that it's been scientifically proven that our brains, as highly sensitive people, operate differently from our mirror neurons. The mirror neurons are the empathy part of the brain, and they are what science calls overactive. In fact, more active than 80% of the planet. So we are different, and we know it. We can feel it, and we know it. And when we're younger, we're like, yeah, I just feel things. I can't explain it. People are like, pull up your bootstraps. Stop feeling so much. It's kind of like telling someone with some, it's like telling a narcissist to stop being selfish. Do you know what I mean? It's just one of those things that you have to really recognize that, oh, I'm having some deep emotions about this. And there's lots of different areas of life where we could be grieving. So let's go over some of those areas. And I want you to think about your own life and where you are in life with your own grieving processes. Okay. Is there anything you want to share?
The one thing that I did want to share are the 5 stages of grief really quick.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for doing that.
Because Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, I believe, is one of the main people that coined this. But the first stage of grief is denial and maybe isolation, where you find yourself isolating and wanting just to be alone. The second stage of grief is anger. The third is bargaining.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Fourth is depression. And the fifth is acceptance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. I forgot to make note to share that. So good job on pulling that in. It's important for you to know that as you are going through the grieving process that Jack just shared, everyone spends a different amount of time in each one of those stages. So you could be in denial for years about something before you get into the anger place, and then the bargaining and the depression and the acceptance.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll bounce back and forth for a while to say anger and then denial again, and anger and denial again. You can go back and forth. So it's very, very different for every person. And we're going to be talking more about that in a little bit. So let's talk about the different ways, the different types of grief. Okay. Number one, of course, is death. That's the one that most everybody talks about. Number two is releasing relationships that no longer serve you.
Are we going to jump in and talk about each of these after you go through?
Yeah,
or
totally.
do you want to talk as we go?
What do you mean?
Each one of the things as we go through.
Yeah, I want to talk about releasing the relationships that no longer serve you. So what kind of relationships? Do you have anything that you want to share about that?
Well, definitely. I mean, coming into my own and coming out as myself as a trans man, there were many, many old forms and shapes that I've released, ways that I've been and showed up in life. And you come out and stand in the truth of yourself at a higher level. There's old yous, old ways, old patterns that it's uncomfortable for a minute when you're shifting and growing and expanding as a person, whether you're coming out like I did as trans or you're just shifting or changing the way you do things in life. There's some old forms that have to be released. And there's some grief and some grieving of the old processes of life.
Okay, let's skip to number 5 then, because that's that one.
Okay.
We're going to come back to this one, but number 5 in this list is letting go of the old you. And that's what Jack is talking about.
Oh, yeah.
So when you let go of the old you, there is a grieving process. How many of you have felt this grieving that happens when you let go of the old way of being as you're evolving? How many of you have experienced that? I know I have. I feel like every year I'm a new person. And there's, when you let go of your old self, you let go of your beliefs. You let go of your ideas.
And the old pictures and the old stories and the old dreams that match that old you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you move into a new realm of new choice within yourself and you're creating new pictures, you literally, I have watched you especially grieve the loss of the old pictures of what you thought certain things would be, while choosing something new and amazing.
Absolutely. So it doesn't mean that, you're not embracing and excited about the new you, but there is this grieving process that you're like, oh, I have to really let go of that old way of being. So that's one of the ways that we grieve. So Rita said now, Belinda said yes. Irene said, I won't allow myself very often. What do you mean you won't allow yourself very often, Irene? What specifically are we talking about? Sarah said yes. I am guessing that each one of you have had an experience at some point where you have had to let go of your old self so that you can move powerfully into your new self experience.
Yeah, Jess said I have definitely grieved almost every new level of me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think we think about this very much. We may think, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Why do I feel upset? But it's important for you to understand the different levels and the different ways of grief.
And I think if there is one massive takeaway that you walked away from today's show with, is that it's okay for you to grieve the way you're grieving. And it's okay for you to accept and understand that this is your journey. This is your process.
Mm-hmm.
And to honor the emotion there. Lulu said, I always thought, and I think it was when you were talking about narcissists and being really being an empath and very feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And she always thought for a long time, it's just that she was the only female being raised in a very male dominated place.
Absolutely.
And you cannot understand these things. And grief as an empath is a deeper experience.
Okay. So
that's a good point too that Rita just said. There's a lot of suffering brought to the surface when your soul is ready to shed the old you.
And I want to talk about, I'll address that really quick. So there's a big difference between pain and suffering. Pain is non-optional. Suffering is always a choice. So it's the perception you have about what's happening. So that's kind of why we're doing this call today, is so that you can get really comfortable with living in this human condition of having grief, that you don't have to suffer endlessly, but it is going to be painful. They're two very different things.
Great point.
And if you can see the difference, then you can move through. You know, suffering comes from like, what's wrong with me? You know, why am I feeling this way? But if you're clearly aware that you're going to have periods in time in life where you will absolutely be grieving, then you'll be able to move through the pain of that quickly without that long-term suffering. Suffering sucks.
I feel like one of the things that happened when my dad died, this kind of jumps back to number one, death.
Yeah.
When my dad died, I was 11 years old. I was the youngest of 7. He was killed in a farming accident, so it was sudden. And because I was raised in a tradition and a culture where feelings were suppressed, they weren't welcome, they weren't talked about. You just shouldn't have feelings. You should just do what you're supposed to do and get on with it. And the first thing that right immediately when I first got the shocking news that my dad had died, I went running down into the basement, and the very first thing that came out of my sister's mouth, she came down to where I was, my older sister. She said, "Don't cry." And I know she was doing it out of, you know, trying to comfort, but the words were, "Don't cry." My dad had just died.
Right.
And the first words were, "Don't cry." And because I was raised in such a non-feeling tradition, the suffering that ensued, because I never had a place to feel and understand, and to just have somebody talk to me, "How do you feel? How are you feeling?" You know, and not say, "Don't cry," and just really come in and say, "You're going to have a lot of sadness. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to cry. You're going to have grief. You're going to feel hurt. Time will bring in some mending, but it's important that you feel. It's important that you cry." That would have alleviated
a lot of suffering
decades of suffering. Decades of suffering, shutting down, dissociating, disconnecting, trying to control food, trying to find control in all these other ways, because I felt so utterly out of control, and that there was no outlet for the tears. There was no outlet for the feelings that were so raw.
Right.
And that's, I'm so glad you talked about the difference between suffering and pain. And it's painful when you lose someone. It's painful.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
it really is. Okay, so releasing past relationships. It can be with spouse. It can be with children. It can be with parents. It can be with friends.
Yeah, it's rough.
I don't know how many of us really think about, oh, this is a grieving process. I know when I decided to leave the religion of my upbringing, it was so deeply connected into my family that I lost many relationships in pretty deep ways that have not recovered, and probably will not, because I believe many different things than say most of my family. And I had to be willing to do that. And there was an intense grieving process. And even now, sometimes I'll hear from a family member and they'll say something, you know, nice or kind, and I'll break down and cry. It's the weirdest thing. I'm like, where did that come from? But there was a huge grief of leaving those relationships. And I've had to release many relationships in my life, like I'm sure all of you. How many of you have had to release relationships because for some reason it's no longer serving you, and you had a pretty intense grieving experience? And you may not have even recognized you were having to grieve about that.
And Belinda just shared, I can't even begin to count how many ways grief has been my world. Death of body, death of relationship, marriage, religion, youth, on and on. I found my dad's death this week has caught me so off guard.
I know, Belinda, I bet.
It's affected me. So when you release relationships, but then you have a death within, you know, that person passes, and maybe that relationship has been rocky or other things, and you think I shouldn't be upset, or I'm surprised by my sadness. No, sadness is a beautiful emotion to be expressed.
Oh, Louise said she has lost someone, a very close friend, and she had to let it go. I know it can be really, really painful. And, you know, as we're talking about this, I was thinking about the dog that we had for 14 years. and Jasmine, and she was just my constant companion. And we lost her about 3 months ago. And I still wake up in the middle of the night and cry. And I'm so glad that I can do that so that I can release the emotions from the body, because your body and your brain, both of them have to process something, because it wasn't in the plan to release this relationship or have a death. It wasn't in the plan for the joy of your life. So when those things change, then it's like, oh, I'm grieving right now. And if you can allow yourself the opportunity and the gift to grieve, then you move through all of that quite well. But we really have to recognize where we're going to be grieving in our life. So,
here's one more that we must speak to: when kids leave home.
Oh, great.
That is a massive shift.
That is a great, did that come from Kelly?
Verse straight.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We became empty nesters ourselves, maybe 3 years ago. And that was a really interesting experience, because then you have to find a new way of doing things and a new way of communicating in certain ways. And the letting go process, kids leaving home can be really, really, there's a grieving process for sure.
And leaving a relationship with somebody that's narcissistic or a narcissist.
Yeah, absolutely.
You still love them, right? Kirsten, you love them, but you know it's not healthy for you to be there. So allowing yourself the grief and not getting down on yourself for that. Rita says, I get really tired of the tears, right? Sometimes it can feel really overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's such an essential part of the grieving process. Literally, your body has more energy to move and get out so that it's not stored in you, creating dis-ease or trouble.
Right. Yeah, Kelly, I'm sure the tears will come at the perfect time when it's time to release that energy. But getting there, it's a really interesting journey, you guys, isn't it? To go through the deep sorrow of the losses of life and to really honor that. Okay, number 3, losing a community that is familiar to us. So that can be a million different things. For me, leaving the Mormon religion is something that I chose to do because it didn't really fit with the lifestyle that I was living. And that was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. And there was years of grieving about that. Because there was a loss of, relationships and family connection and camaraderie and community and all of those things. And where I was going was so much more of what I was looking for, but I still had to grieve. Even though where I was going was so much better for me and made me feel so good and was so exciting and all the newness that was coming in. Oh my God, I still had to feel all of those feelings of loss. And it was the wildest thing. And it would come in little increments. So depending on where you've been, my friends, I'm sure all of you have had a period of time where it could be you leaving high school and going to college or graduating college, or it could be a million different things, a certain job. What about you? Are you reading all the comments?
I am. I was just, Belinda had said I hadn't spoken to my dad in a decade. And this is a really important point, because we may really get down on ourselves and think, why am I crying? I shouldn't be crying about this. I haven't talked to him in a decade. And now she's becoming aware of the grief over. Now there's no opportunity to ever have another conversation in this form.
Right.
And that right there is its own level of grief, of letting go of that, maybe that underlying hope or dream that maybe there could be a way that could somehow find some peace in this life. Yeah. And leaving community. Is that the one you're on right now?
A community that's familiar to you.
Yeah. I think for many, well, I'll speak for myself. Like you had said, coming out to be in a relationship with Tiff, so the world sees us as gay, and then coming out me as a trans man, and leaving behind the community, my family community of my place in the family. And just in one of my coaching sessions today, having a discussion about this, that if we were to base our worth and identity on everyone else's happiness with us, or when we lose our good name with them, right? And then I get called the lost soul. That's my new title within the family. And, it's funny and we can laugh about it, but honestly, processing that was a deep grief.
Right.
Very, very, very deep grief. And when we lose our old form, or the way that we've showed up, or the way that we identified ourselves, and then we're finding our new self and understanding who are we outside of what other people's opinions are of us. And it's challenging.
It's a tricky
work.
one. It's tricky.
Someone said shadow work. Hell yeah, shadow work. That's where you really get to go in and look and identify all of your limiting beliefs that you've believed about yourself, that my worth is in how this person sees me, or how this family accepts me, and that suddenly we're not being accepted, or they've kicked us off the pedestal that they had us on.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to sort it all out. And that's the beauty of life. And that's why we're talking about grief.
Right.
So that you can process this and be healthy within yourself with it.
Okay, so the last one is losing certainty. I think all of us over the last year and a half going through a pandemic, this is a worldwide thing. We can talk to everybody about this, because we lost the old way of living, and we had to adjust and adapt. And how many of you felt like you went through a grieving process of your old life of freedom, not thinking about the virus? I sure as shit did. I was like, every time I go out, now I'm starting to wear a mask again because of this variant that's coming up. And it's just like, wow, my life was so different before the pandemic. I literally had to go through a grieving process. I feel like I've really worked through that now, and that I'm in the place of acceptance, and I'm just moving forward. And I know that things will get better and better in lots of different ways, but we're not out of the pandemic yet. I mean, I wish we were, but we're not. How many of you felt that way? What about you?
Yeah, for sure. I remember a few of the days, marker points, as we moved through the 2020, and we had a lot of other trauma happening in addition to the pandemic in our house. There were days that it just got the best of me, where I just sat down and bawled my eyes out.
Yeah.
And literally just felt like there's just nothing else I can do but just bawl my eyes out. And honestly, I always felt better when I was done bawling about it.
Yeah.
And it's just a really big deal in this world. Things have changed. 2020 ushered in change for the entire world.
It did.
And even prior to. And it's still changing. It's still moving and growing and shifting. And, we're all just watching and have, okay, what's next? But this is okay. And this is where we get to link arms. This is where we get to say it's okay to grieve. It's okay to grieve the loss of the old form, and to walk forward together, knowing that we've got this. Yeah. We've got this.
Louise said, I'm grieving the lost friends through the pandemic, not through death, but by not being able to see them.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, Jack threw me a surprise birthday party about almost 2 weeks ago for my 50th birthday. And there were a whole bunch of people here, and we all stayed outside, but I hugged everybody and hoped I didn't get the Delta variant. That's how it is. Like, is it worth the hugs? And I'm like, I just missed people so much. And after, I'm like, oh, I miss having my martini parties and these get-togethers with people where there's connection. And I set up another party for the beginning of October, and I'm not going to do that now because of where we are with the new variant. So, that was a little grieving. And I'm like, it's not going to be permanent, but it's the ways that we work with our mind to work through grief. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you 7 ways to work through grief easier, because anyone that knows me knows that I'm all about finding simple ways of doing things so life is not so overwhelming for all of us deep feelers and empaths that get so easily overwhelmed. So let's talk about these 7 things. These are 7 ways that you can manage your grief that will really assist you in staying out of suffering and just managing the pain of grief, okay? So number 1, recognize that grief, and we've already talked about this, recognize that grief is a normal part of life and crying is necessary. Crying has been such an ordeal for me because I have a really strong personality. The way I was raised, I come from a really strong family. And it wasn't until I met Jack that I noticed that he could cry so much easier than I could. And I cry on the inside, and when I'm by myself, I bawl like a baby. But in front of people, things like that, I just have had a really hard time. But I'm so good through my brain injury and the trauma of that. I can no longer hold back tears, and many of you have seen me cry online. And I'm like, what, who the F cares at this point, you know? So crying, let me just share this with you. Crying is an energetic release. That's why we have the ability to cry, so that we can release energy from the body. But not only that, it releases oxytocin in the brain. And that's the feel-good chemical. So after you cry, you're actually going to feel better every single time. Doesn't mean you're not going to cry again about the same thing, but you're going to cry and remove some of that energy, release that chemical, and begin to experience some resolution in the things that you are grieving. Mm-hmm. And laughing's the same. It releases energy from the body so it doesn't get stuck, and also releases oxytocin. So crying and laughing, they're just really, really beautiful gifts that we all have. And if you think about it that way, it's not going to be so hard to cry, right? Okay, number 2, find simple ways to celebrate what was. So I was thinking about that. We're always about celebrating. And I would like you to think to yourself now, do you celebrate the things? Because, you know, some of the things that we let go of, we're choosing to let go of because of the negativity, but not everything is all negative. So there's always going to be some positive. So like your dad's death, every September, it's his death month, next month, 42 years. We always go get a bushel of peaches, and then we go to Maddox, which was his favorite restaurant, and we get
coconut cream pie.
Yes. To celebrate his life in his death month.
Yeah, it's a really fun memory. And that's one of the challenges for me after my dad died and I was younger. And people just wouldn't talk about it. And I just wish people would tell me funny stories and laugh and talk about the awesome, funny things. He was a really funny guy. And so it's fun to go out and celebrate in a really lighthearted, fun remembrance of my dad.
And you always have such great stories. He and I would have been like this. I know it, because I just love the way he is. I know we would have just had such a great little connection.
Yeah, for sure. He was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. And the nice thing is he's still very much around.
Yeah, that's true.
That's one of the perks of being married to a medium. Let's talk about that for a minute. Yeah, I've developed a very close connection and relationship with my dad since he passed. And since Tiff came into my life and brought him back to me, and he stepped in, he was not going to let her get away without making sure I knew he was here. So it's been awesome that way too.
Oh, Araceli, would you share that? I think that's beautiful.
That's something I appreciate about my culture, the annual tradition of Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. It's a rich tradition of celebrating the life of those who have passed.
What a brilliant tradition.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
So my friends, think of ways that you can celebrate the past for where you've been. And it makes grief so much more doable. Okay, number 4, recognize everyone grieves differently, and the way you grieve is okay. Okay, everybody grieves differently. I've never met one person that grieves the same. With our pet, my grieving process, has that surprised you or what?
Yeah, it's been very big. Did you miss number 3?
Mm-mm. Oh, yes, I did. I'll get back to it.
Okay.
So I have grieved that animal. Like I just can't even believe it. Cried and cried and cried. And I'm still crying, and I'm still crying about it. And what I realized some beautiful things about her, and I'm going to push this back up to the one that I missed, where it says, focus on the gifts and the blessings.
Number 3.
Of the past. So I'm going to kind of tie this in with my dog. When Jasmine died, we'd had her for a long time. She was with me through my brain injury. She would not leave my side, and she drove me crazy because she would pick up all my energy, and she just was running around the house, just anxious as hell. And she started to get sick, and I thought my brain injury is going to kill her if it doesn't kill me. And she was there, and she was this ball of love that was just such a beautiful animal. And what I didn't realize after she passed, I realized that she was a healer to me, and she grounded me every single day for 14 years. When that was gone, I was like, I feel a little loose-ended here. and I'm having to adjust to a new way of being. And she was such a blessing. And so, my friends, when you have lost something, whether it's by choice or through death or something else, there's always going to be positives you're going to see after. You don't have to just see totally the negative. You can go back and you can recognize and focus on the gifts and blessings that you had during those times. That helps so much with the grief as well. So focus on the gifts and blessings of the past and recognize everyone grieves differently, and the way you grieve is okay. That's really important. And then number 5, if there's someone in your life that you can reach out to receive comfort, it's a really smart thing to do. I am married to my best friend in absolutely every possible way. And I have many loving people in my life that are very concerned about my well-being. And if I'm ever in a grieving process, and we as empaths, we're so good at comforting others, but we're not always so good at receiving comfort because we're afraid of rejection. But if you have someone in your life that you feel like you can really trust and just say, I'm going through a grieving process right now, and you're able to share, and that person is able to hold space and provide comfort for you, that is a really beautiful gift to receive. And I would say most people probably have someone somewhere in their life that can provide a bit of comfort to them when they're in a grieving process. So it's okay to reach out during those grieving times to do that. Do I comfort you?
Huge comfort.
Oh. You look like my child right now. This is what I did to our kids.
That's so precious.
Okay. Number 6. This is very helpful. And I think I read it in the Strand that someone said that they did a lot of writing to work through their grief. Or maybe I was talking to a client the last couple of days. But writing a letter to someone that you've released or a past loved one, to really get all your feelings and emotions in the letter. Doesn't mean you have to deliver it. It's just writing, or just writing your feelings out, your grieving feelings. It is powerful medicine, my friends. And I would suggest this for every aspect of life that is difficult, is to write. Because as you're writing, scientifically, this is what's happening. You have to slow down to write something. So your brain is literally processing it as you are writing. And the energy is released from the body. It releases pain. It releases grief. It releases all kinds of uncomfortable things.
Araceli, writing to my past self.
Ooh, great idea. Fantastic idea.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And to your future self, just for fun.
Absolutely. So what is one thing that all of you would tell your past self with the wisdom that you have at this moment? Go ahead and share in the Strand. It'll be a really great thing to read. So what would you tell your past self with the wisdom that you have in this moment?
What I'd say.
What'd you say?
I'd say, think bigger. You get to have it all.
Nice.
That's what I'd say.
I would probably say, stop stressing out. Everything's going to be better than you think. Stop whining.
It will all work for good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't worry, everything is taken care of.
Amen.
Right?
This is a great reminder.
Love yourself.
Absolutely.
Don't let your dreams go.
Good. I love these. Please keep sharing. Number 7.
It's going to be okay.
Number 7 is get a therapist, life coach, or support group. It's so funny that you asked the question about a life coach or a therapist. Whatever you feel comfortable with. Going into an office to talk to someone, whether it's talk therapy, whether it's a strategy session, whether it's a group of people that know where you've been, like the Connected Empath, sometimes I feel like is an amazing support group. These are really powerful things because you feel supported and you're able to express yourself and how you feel, right? So this is a really powerful thing to do. So therapist, life coach, or support group. So let me go through these 7 things again really quickly. So if you want to write them down, you can. Recognize that grief is a normal part of life and that crying will help you heal. 2, find simple ways to celebrate what was. 3, focus on the gifts and the blessings of the past. 4, recognize everyone grieves differently and the way you're grieving is okay. Number 5, reach out to someone that can comfort you. And number 6, write a letter to someone or write your feelings down. So write. And number 7, get a therapist, life coach, or support group to support you.
There you go.
So there you have it.
Hi, Kelly Smith.
Kelly.
We love you, and Shell too. Okay, do you want to hear some of these awesome one-liners that we're gonna, now you have your 7 ways to work through grief, to allow yourself that beautiful process of shift and change and growth and release. And let's say a few of these amazing things that you would have told yourself.
Let's do it.
Writing a letter to yourself. Realize you're an empath and do some research. Irene, find Tiff and Jack sooner. That's really sweet. Thank you. Believe in yourself every step of the way. Be easier on yourself. Hold on to your dreams. They come true. Nothing is as it seems. Wake up. You're alive and in charge. You are not a victim. You are exactly where you're supposed to be.
Right.
This too shall pass.
That's such a
Belinda
good one.
said, keep a detailed journal. It's going to be good.
That's awesome.
Terry, it's going to be okay. Don't let your dreams go. Love yourself. Don't worry. Everything is going to be okay. It all works out for good. Isn't that beautiful? Like, seriously. And that is the truth. And this beautiful reminder, if you are someone right now going through grief, just remember the sun will come up tomorrow. Feel those beautiful feelers, even if it hurts a little when you feel, or a lot. By feeling it, it actually moves that energy through you and brings you back to a place of feeling grounded and connected and supported. Remember, you're not alone. You're not alone. Even if you can't see people around you, you have angels that are always here helping you. There are helpers everywhere helping us from the unseen world. And when we release a relationship, a person that passes to the next dimension, their energy is still all around you.
That's right.
Supporting you, loving you, there with you.
And my friends, for those of you that are not in our Connected Empath group, because this is on like lots of different places, if you feel like you're an empath, come into the group. It's a great place of support. And we have a lot of fun in there. And in a month, we're getting ready. We're getting ready again.
Oh boy, you're going to talk about, yep, we're rolling out our updated, amazing Energized Empath Lab. It will have some very new, different parts, so you do not want to miss it. Mark the calendar, save the date, September 12th. 12th.
Exactly one day,
one
month from today.
So you heard it here first.
Yes.
We'll get the registration form out here in the next couple of weeks.
Did I just put some pressure on you?
No way. No way. This is awesome. Perfect timing. Perfect timing. We love you very much. We couldn't do what we do without you. Thank you for being here with us. We love doing our lives because we see you.
I think we had 50 people on most of the time today.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love to see the numbers because it just means more people to love and connect with.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. We love you very much. Eat dessert first.
Because life is meant to be devoured.
Always.